There's this saying that a daughter's first love is her father. Sweet, right? Romantic even. But in Africa? That's where it gets complicated. Here, we don't exactly grow up seeing fathers showering daughters with movie scene hugs while violins play in the background. In fact, in most African literature, if fathers aren't shouting, neglecting, or plotting some epic polygamous move, they're probably already dead by chapter 2. And no, that's not me being dramatic. That's just the syllabus. Think about the fathers in books like Nervous Conditions, So Long a Letter, Joys of Motherhood, Purple Hibiscus, and the rest of the Let's Make Dad the Villain collection. They're usually abusive, absent, intolerant, or all three, like a toxic buffet you didn't order. And if you dare to write about a good man, be ready for publishers to ask, yes, but where's the tragedy? Where's the suffering? Apparently, the meaner the man, the faster the tears flow, and the quicker the books fly off the shelves.
I'm just saying.
Now, don't get me wrong. Terrible fathers do exist. But literature has been recycling this one-dimensional image so much that an American reader once told Chimamanda Adichie he didn't know African men were that abusive. See? The stereotypes stick. But here's the thing. What about the fathers who work day and night, sacrificing everything to send their daughters to school? The ones who fought family objections, sold their prized goats, maybe even borrowed money just so their girls could get an education. The ones who pulled heaven and earth to protect their families? Those men exist, in large numbers, but you rarely see them in novels. That's exactly why I picked up Fathers and Daughters, an anthology of exploration, edited by Ato Quayson. Because finally, a book gives fathers a chance to speak, and daughters a chance to remember them in more than just shades of tyrant and troublemaker. This anthology is a blend of essays, poems, and short stories, all exploring the delicate, sometimes messy, always fascinating relationship between fathers and daughters in Africa. And let me tell you, it's not all hugs and roses. Some of the pieces still paint fathers in gray, but at least the whole rainbow is starting to show. The collection kicks off with Amulets and Fathers by Leila Aboulela. Now don't let the title fool you. This isn't a warm family picnic. It's the story of a daughter who sets off on a journey to avenge her father's death. But here's the twist. It's more than just a revenge plot. There are turns you don't see coming, and it goes beyond the father into a web of relationships, secrets, and meaning. Then we have the heartfelt works by Abena Busia. She shares both an epistolary story and a poem about her father, a man from that early generation of African dads who were often strict, sometimes absent, but still deeply committed to their families. Her writing carries that bittersweet recognition that comes later in life, the moment you finally understand your father, years after you thought you had him figured out. Ayebia Clarke, the publisher herself, adds her own personal story about her itinerant magistrate father, a man whose work had him moving around constantly, shaping both her childhood and her understanding of him. But here's where the book really digs into the complexity. Letter to a Lost Daughter by Harry Garuba. This one stayed with me. It's about a father who fought against his entire extended family to ensure his daughter got the best education possible. Medical school, no less. He spent all his resources, endured constant grumbling from relatives, and still stood firm. But when she became a doctor, she cut off all contact with him, simply because he kept pestering her to get married. Years later, she comes home for his funeral, finds a letter from him, and, plot twist, realizes the letter was actually written by her to him. The layers in that moment, heartbreaking and powerful. Zina Saro-Wiwa's His Eyes Were Shining Like a Child is, well, a mix of surreal and emotional. It's about a father who had berated and tormented his daughter until he suddenly reincarnates into a baby and appears at her door. Imagine, one day you're dealing with the ghost of your father's criticisms, and the next, you're holding him as an infant. The symbolism here is rich. Rebirth, forgiveness, the circle of life. But perhaps my favorite moments in the book are when the fathers themselves speak. Simon Gikandi's A Voyage Round. My daughter is both personal and cultural. He tells the story of taking his children to visit his Kikuyu family after many failed attempts. He assumed the family would be more interested in the boys, but to his surprise, it was his daughter who became the center of attention. Everyone doted on her, and that made him reflect on how Kikuyu culture shifted from matrilineal to patrilineal over time, and what that means for women today. Then there's Paul Tiyambe Zeleza's Memories of Birth and Other Anecdotes, where he writes about raising his daughter and the joy he found in living with her. These are the moments African literature often skips. The tenderness of fatherhood, the pride, the shared laughter, as though such emotions don't belong to men. Reading this book felt a bit like attending a family meeting where everyone suddenly decides to be honest. You hear the hard father stories, yes, but you also hear the soft father stories, the ones where love was quiet, hidden under layers of duty and cultural restraint. And sometimes you realize that what daughters interpreted as coldness was actually the only way those fathers knew how to show love. There's this African thing. Men are not supposed to show emotion. Crying is unmanly. Hugging is strange. And so daughters grow up thinking their fathers are stone walls, only to discover years later that those walls were actually holding up the roof over their heads. The book I'm talking about is Fathers and Daughters, an Anthology of Exploration, edited by Ato Quayson. For me, this anthology fills a huge gap in African literature. It challenges the stereotype of the African father as nothing but abusive or absent, and instead presents a spectrum, from the strict but loving, to the misunderstood, to the genuinely flawed. It also gives fathers a voice, which is, pretty rare in African narratives dominated by mother-daughter relationships. Themes that stand out: representation of men in African literature, questioning why they're almost always villains, generational shifts in fatherhood, how modern fathers differ from their own fathers, cultural silence around male emotions, and how it impacts relationships, the role of memory and hindsight, daughters understanding their fathers only years later. Ato Quayson isn't just any editor. He's a professor of English, director of the Center for Diaspora and Transnational Studies, and a fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. He studied at the University of Ghana in Cambridge, where he earned his PhD in 1995. His works include strategic transformations in Nigerian writing and post-colonialism, theory, practice, or process. In 2008, he brought us this anthology, making space for one of the most underexplored relationships in African storytelling: fathers and daughters. If you've ever judged African fathers by the novels you've read, this book might just make you think twice. It's proof that in literature, just like in life, there's always more than one side to the story. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. Click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.